Welcome to a special virtual edition of the Skeptics track at Dragoncon. And now, your host, Angie Mackey.
Hi, welcome to Skeptrack virtually live streaming. It looks like we kind of came around to the end of the universe and back again. Thank you for joining us today. We have with us today Richard Saunders, who's going to talk to us about passing the paranormal, the psychic challenges. Hi, Richard. He's joining us from Sydney, Australia.
Dr. Angie Mackey, great to see you. Great to be here virtually at Dragoncon.
It's quite a switch with me interviewing you for a change. Usually it's the other way around.
It is, and you're always such a pleasure to interview, especially after a couple of glasses of Dragoncon wine.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, tell us about the psychic challenge. Is he frozen? Oh, there he is. Tell us about the paranormal challenge.
Well, it's a long way from Australia, so the internet sort of goes around the moon a couple of times.
I was going to say, it goes out to Neptune, comes all the way back. It's fine. Totally fine.
So I'm going to be talking about some of the highlights of testing people for the $1 Million Challenge and the $100,000 challenge here in Australia, and hopefully some tips and guidelines to any would-be psychic or devotee of the paranormal who'd like to take the skeptics' money.
Let's hear it.
Hello, I'm Richard Saunders from Sydney, Australia. I'm the host of the Skeptic Zone podcast, but I've been a skeptic for about 20 years. It has been my delight and pleasure to attend Dragoncon many years ago in the late 2000s and again last year. And like all of you, I'm certainly missing not being there in person this year. So I'm very pleased to be able to be here virtually for this talk about a guide to passing the Skeptics Challenge. Or, put your money where your mouth is, Mr. Skeptic. Now, before we get into the talk, I'd like you to consider something. I'm sure many of you play a musical instrument. Probably the piano, maybe the guitar, the flute, the double bass, whatever it is. Have a look at this sheet music. Now, some of you will be able to look at that and say, yes, I can play that. I can follow those notes and make a tune. Please keep that in mind for later on in the talk. As I said before, I've done many things in my skeptical career. I'm a life member of the Australian Skeptics. I was part of the James Randi Educational Foundation's $1 Million Challenge Committee. More about that a bit later. I'm a fellow for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. I've been involved with the Mystery Investigators Science Show for schools for about 16 years. I was a TV star briefly on a paranormal show. I've done movies and other TV, and I make origami. In fact, it's one of my great passions in life, apart from skepticism, of course. And I was lucky enough some years ago to find this wonderful model. I didn't invent it, but I found it. An origami alien. So my two worlds sort of collide in that model. I think it's wonderful. And I've had a lot of fun and adventures on TV and movie sets over the years. No, that's not me. That's Hugh Jackman. I'm sort of standing to the side. About 10 years ago, I was the skeptical judge on a reality TV show. Now, it was interesting to sit back and watch the show as it was broadcast and see the tweets and the comments coming in. And this one caught my eye. Well, I guess you can't please everyone. Now, the TV show called The One was all about testing paranormal claims, but it must be remembered that it was a show done for fun and entertainment. The tests were run once. It was really not supposed to be a scientific test of paranormal claims, more a bit of a TV entertainment. But I did learn a lot from doing that show. Now let's get to the fact that around the world there are large sums of money on offer for anybody who can prove a paranormal or supernatural claim. And this came about in around 1964 when James Randi was challenged on a radio program to put your money where your mouth is. So James Randi did just that. On the spot, he wrote a check for $1,000. And of course, over the years that grew and grew until eventually, for the James Randi Educational Foundation, that was $1 million for quite a long period of time. That test has now been retired, and it's up to the board of the James Randi Educational Foundation if they wish to pursue anybody with that test in mind. But it's shut to applicants at the moment. And fair enough too. Mr. Randi is long since retired, and after something like 50 years of offering large sums of money, nobody had come forward and passed the tests. So it was about time that was retired. But there are still many tests around the world, including one here in Australia, for $100,000. Now this is the little check we have here for the Australian Skeptics $100,000 prize. And the conditions are quite simple, quite straightforward. 1. What exactly is your claim? It might seem a very straightforward question, but a lot of people can't articulate this. They say they have dreams, or they have visions, or they know they're psychic, but they can't tell us exactly what their paranormal claim is. 2. Under what conditions can you perform or demonstrate your claim? Now, it's vital that they tell us, and we don't impose something upon them. If they can only do their claim on Wednesday afternoons, we need to know that. If they can only do their claim after meditating for 6 hours, we need to know that. To accommodate them, to make it easier on the person making the claim to show us what they can do. And again, a lot of people can't answer that question. Then number 3, what success rate do you expect? Believe it or not, many people simply cannot answer that question. They might say, as in the case of water diviners, oh, I'm successful 100% of the time. Many water diviners make that claim. Or they may say, oh, most of the time. No, we need to know reasonably, more or less, what success rate people expect to have. If they're tossing a coin, for example, and they say we get a 50% success rate, well, you see where I'm coming from. So once those 3 questions are answered, and that's very difficult, and most people cannot answer those 3 questions, we can move on. Now, a general overview. We, the skeptics, we are not out to prove you cannot do your claim, or to disprove your claim, or to debunk your claim. That's not where we're coming from. We will only test you on your particular claim. That's very important. Tests are a joint effort and only go ahead once both parties agree on the conditions. That's probably one of the most important things we have to say on the tests. It's not going to go ahead if the person making the claim disagrees with the test. We're not interested in that. We're not interested in saying you have to do it this way. We know that's not what you do, but we want you to do it that way. No, both parties have to be in complete agreement. And we need to establish a pass or fail mark before the test starts. So afterwards, there's no post hoc interpretation of the rules or the conditions, or oh, I thought you meant this, or whatever it is, or I got 3 out of 20. I think that's enough. We welcome scrutiny and oversight by whomever you wish. And depending on the nature of the claim, we have a mark of beating 100 to 1,000 to 1 odds for the preliminary stage of the test. Now, this is up to negotiation during the time we talk to you about applying for the money. And it's worth noting here too that there are always 2 tests. There's a preliminary stage, which is easier, relaxed, informal, and then if the claimant passes that, then we move on to the big money challenge, which is more scientifically rigorous. But again, it depends on the test what the odds are and what the passing mark is. But just a note on beating huge odds. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Many children can play this with ease and learn it in minutes. And I can play it, and you can probably play it too. If you can't play it, you can learn it very, very quickly. However, the odds of playing just the first 4 notes at random on a keyboard of 88 keys is 1 in 59,969,536. But no one would say that's impossible odds. The point is, if you can play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the millions to 1 odds are meaningless. You can do it regardless. By the way, the odds of playing the first line of 14 notes is 1 in, well, a very large number indeed. Yet people can do that with ease. Some other points to make is we will not test claims that put the claimant, the public, or us in any danger. I don't think that's really come up yet, but we certainly wouldn't do that. We expect to have a civil dialogue in a respectful manner. If we insult you, you are free to quit the test and tell the world. If you insult us, don't expect we'll waste our time on you or your claim. Now, this has happened in the past where people have been snarky and rude about the skeptics. I'm going to take your money, and made very rude and bad comments and unhelpful, or threatened to sue us if they lose. Things like that, then we're just not interested. We've got better things to do. And the test, win or fail, will be reported by us in full in our magazine, The Skeptic, which is, there's a copy there. And you will be given the right of reply, and you are free to document the test and report it in whatever journal or blog or podcast you see fit. So here's one of the ways of looking at a possible test. Say somebody said to us that they have the psychic power to peer inside a sealed envelope and tell us about the contents, like a photograph. And say, for example, we chose to use this particular photograph. We have clouds and the sunset, some birds flying across a snowy land with some water, river there or something like that, some trees in the background, all sorts of things going on. Now, the psychic may well look at the envelope and have a meditation and come back and say they get a peaceful feeling of tranquility, and there's something to do, they feel, with nature. They're not sure what's going on. They're sensing blue. Things like this. We open the envelope, they see this picture and they say, oh, nature, you see, I got it right. And look, there's some water in the picture. The water's usually blue, and on it goes. This is absolutely no good, because usually they can be very flowery and they can waffle a little bit, and this is my interpretation, this is my feeling. So rather than doing it this way, we would do it this way. We would show them 6 pictures, for example, which are completely different, and ask them to study those pictures and then tell them one of these pictures will be used in the sealed envelope. You won't know which one, and if we do our tests properly, the people conducting the test won't know either if we get into double blind. So when they're presented with the envelope, they know it has to be one of those pictures, which gives them a 1 in 6 chance from pure luck alone. So that's the sort of thing we would do, and naturally would have to repeat that test 10, 20, 30 times, as many times as we possibly could to get reasonable statistics. But what this does, while being fair, is eliminates the interpretation afterwards. Oh, I thought that was that, or I meant this, and yes, I can see it now. This is what I was really seeing. By the way, that's Maud, one of the skeptical podcast cats here at the Skeptic Zone. Now, testing water divining is an absolute classic. It's one of the things we've done here in Australia for the past 40 years, with hundreds of water diviners being tested. And this came about from our wonderful friend, Mr. James Randi, who in 1980 flew to Australia to conduct some water divining tests. The documentary is called James Randi in Australia. It's on YouTube. It's a wonderful primer on skepticism and how to double-blind a test and how to test water diviners. And it makes the point that the tests were done in accordance with what the water diviners wished. They agreed to the test before beginning. They said it was fair, and they expected they would pass the test with ease. When the results came in, as you'll see when you watch the documentary, the results were more or less in line with random chance alone. And it's interesting to note that the water diviners, when they all failed, most of them, I think 90%, still put up their hands to say, yes, water divining still works regardless.
Of the dowsers who are here today, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many still believe in dowsing? Let's have a show of hands. Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
What newspaper are you from? The Telegraph, sorry, yes. Now, we did over 100 tests, and the diviners thought that they would be 80 to 100% accurate, and in fact, the accuracy that was worked out by the independent judges, Ted Noss and the other judges, was 11%, which is virtually the random way that it would go.
I've noticed over the years that if the sunspots interfere with divining.
Take the gold. Once it had been in a box for a short period, then that puts in what some people call a remnants.
Even though all the tests have failed and they said they were very confident and happy, they said that they would be quite, they're still quite convinced that dowsing works.
Any volume, any amount,
Yeah.
any duration, any...
Even though, unfortunately, this time they're all proved that it doesn't work.
In more recent years, in the little town of Mitta, which is in Victoria, the Australian Skeptics conducted some more water divining tests. 3 events spanning the years 2001 to 2013. So 2001, 2002, then a big gap, then 2013. Hundreds of water diviners turned up. The water was hidden in a plastic bottle and then wrapped up, or it was a bottle of sand. So when the water diviners came over the bottle to test their water divining rods, they didn't know if the water was in the bottle or the sand was in the bottle, and they had to tell us. Again, after all their tests, the results were in line with random chance. And if you want to see that documentary on one of those events, just look for the mighty Mitta Muster water divining test. Now here's an interesting point about these tests. We see a water diviner there hovering over one of the bottles. Well, that bottle had water in it, and the bottle directly behind him had sand, and we told them that so they could tune up, calibrate their divining devices. Again, it's important to really hammer home the fact that when we do tests, we try to be as fair and upfront as possible and give the applicant every opportunity to pass the test. We're not interested in constructing tests where we know they're going to fail. It would be a waste of our time. We want them to show us their claim and show that it works. While not an official test for the Australian Skeptics' money, it was an interesting test nevertheless. This was the power balance tests way back in 2009. Then this was done on national TV, and it is a case of using a double-blind random test to test somebody who claimed these rubber bands with holograms in them could affect somebody's balance and strength and flexibility. All I did was to apply a little bit of science, randomize the test, and the applicant, or the person making the claim, I should say, failed 5 times out of 5. And subsequently, the power balance franchise collapsed. Now to some of the greatest adventures I've had in testing claims of the paranormal, which were, of course, in Las Vegas during the years of the amazing meeting, TAM, for the James Randi Educational Foundation, where, if I remember correctly, in 2008 I first met Derek Colanduno. Some of the tests on the main stage, one was in 2009 with Connie Sung from Denmark, if I remember correctly. She claimed she could use a dowsing pendulum to locate certain playing cards that were hidden in an envelope, and she was tested live on stage by Banachek, our friend Banachek, and unfortunately she failed every round. I think she had 3 rounds. But the interesting thing, and it was sort of expected, and it happens quite a lot, is that she later decided that Banachek had cheated her because he's a very good magician, even though in this case he was being scrutinized by other magicians and live TV cameras right on his hands, and there was no sleight of hand or anything like that. There was no point. But it does go to show that after people fail, they will usually try to rationalize their failure, and it's very easy simply to blame somebody else. In this case, she blamed Banachek. In 2012, I was part of the crew who tested Andrew Needles for his Denactive SR band, which is similar to the power band. It was something you wore which he said could increase your balance and your strength and so on. And if you search for Andrew Needles on YouTube, you should be able to find that test quite easily. Again, after a very lengthy process of negotiation and getting to the point where he was happy with the test that we conducted, and he had a lot of input into that test, he failed. And not long afterwards, on his website, a page appeared which said, "Thank you, James Randi Educational Foundation," basically pointing out that he actually passed the test anyway. And he used stills from the official video to try to prove his point. It was, he obviously failed, but this sort of thing happens. People will rationalize their failure. Another test in 2013 was remote viewing. We had a man in Algeria, if I remember correctly, and we set up 25 random objects in a locked room, and he, from Algeria, he had to somehow look using psychic methods into the locked room and decide which 3 of those objects were separated in the locked room. And there was lots of meetings and negotiations and all sorts of things to do with that. In the end, the visions told him Mr. Ardin was a toilet paper, a coat hanger, and a packet of potato chips. And what was really on display for him to see was a necktie, a plate, and a toy elephant. Again, simply failed. And then we came to 2014, and Mr. Wong, a student, I think, at the time in America from China, who claimed he could pass mystical energies from his hand into the hand of somebody else, just at a distance, just some cosmic or mystical healing energy, I'd imagine it was. Again, lots of time and preparation to do this test, where he was hidden from the person who could receive the mystical energy. And once again, it's all on YouTube. You can look at this for yourself. But what is not on YouTube is some of the documents we took behind the scenes, or some of the lengths we went to in preparation. So I thought I'd show you some of the behind the scenes video we did in preparation in the days leading up to the test with Mr. Wong. So here you can see us preparing the box he was going to use and many other conditions. So doing these tests is not easy. I must stress this. It's not easy to test many claims of the paranormal or the supernatural, simply because we want to make sure the person doing the test is happy, contented, excited, enthusiastic, relaxed, and confident they will pass. So then we have the situation where people we ask to apply don't. That's very interesting. We've got $100,000 here in Australia. Why aren't people lining up to collect our money? Excuses we've heard in the past are the money is not there, or I'm not interested in your money, or the skeptics will not accept it if I pass. They expect us to cheat or to Welsh on the deal. There we are, the skeptics will cheat. I don't have to prove my claim to anyone. Well, I guess they don't, but what I do is random. I don't control it. Science doesn't know how to test my claim. That's a favourite one. And when they fail, which is, well, 100% of the time so far, they will say things like the test was rigged or the skeptics cheated, or oddly enough they'll say, well, I never thought I was going to pass anyway. The spirits were teaching me a lesson, so they're passing the buck to someone else or something else. The skeptics gave out negative energy. Yeah, we've heard that from time to time. In the case of water diviners, they once said we used the wrong type of water. Or sometimes they'll say that they were too nervous. And, well, you know what? That's understandable. We do everything we can to make them feel okay, but they're on, their reputation's on the line. They can get nervous. So what can you do if you are thinking of applying for the Australian Skeptics or any Skeptics prize money to prove your paranormal or supernatural claim? Well, come to us with a claim that we can actually test. Know what you're going to claim you can do. It's getting back to condition 1. What is your claim? Can we test it? There's no good coming to us with a claim that says you have funny dreams about aliens. How can we test that? Is your claim what we might consider to be paranormal? Just ask. If you're not sure, just ask. Try to be very clear about what you're claiming, getting back to point 1 again. And this one is probably one of the most important things we can ask of somebody, and something that nobody ever does. Test yourself before applying. Don't rely on you just knowing you are right and your claim is real. Have the guts to test yourself before coming to us. Conduct your own tests. Many people won't do this because they think it's a waste of time, since they know they have the paranormal power anyway. Now, testimonials from others aren't going to cut it. It doesn't matter how many people think you are the real deal, or how many people will say that you can talk to their dead mother, or whatever it is. We're not interested. We're interested in testing you for your claim. And in a similar fashion, your stories about how good you've been in the past aren't of much interest to us. Also, please don't bog the skeptics down with lengthy theories about quantum energy or anything like that. Again, we're not very interested. We're interested in you helping us to construct a test of your claim. Now, let's get back to the musical notes at the beginning of the talk. Here they are. And I said to you, do you play a musical instrument? Let's say you play the piano for the sake of the argument. And I'm sure many of you do. Now imagine if I said to you, I would pay you $1 million if you came to a hotel room, for example. Sat down at a piano in the hotel room. I would put a sheet of music in front of you. Maybe even Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or a similar tune. Maybe one chosen at random, which isn't too difficult. And I said to you, you have 10 minutes to play that tune. I'll let you have a quick practice, but within 10 minutes I expect that a random person off the street could walk in and recognize the tune. Say it was The Stars and Stripes Forever or something like that, whatever it is. And you think, great, all my Christmases have come at once. You sit down at the piano, you start playing, and all the notes are wrong. It sounds terrible. There's no tune coming out, or it's the same note, or something is really wrong. Now, I would expect you to look at the piano, look at me, scratch your head, try again, be very confused, and after 10 minutes, walk away completely bewildered and a little bit angry. This, I would suggest, is what happens in the mind of the person who really thinks they're able to do a paranormal skill or ability when they fail the test. So they're confused, they don't know what's going on, and they'll go away very unhappy. But then they'll come back to us and say, well, I know why I failed. It's because of this, and this, and this. I mean, I can do the claim, but on this occasion it was because of this and this. With the piano, they might claim that we rigged the piano in some fashion or something like that. And that's what we expect. We expect people to come back to us because to a lot of people making these claims and applying for the prize money, they know in their heart of hearts that they can actually do it. They really believe that they have these paranormal powers. And the paranormal powers work. So when they don't work, and it's a natural human thing to do, their minds will race to protect that belief system. So imagine if you played the piano and suddenly presented with a piano for a lot of money, you simply couldn't. You too would be trying to find an excuse, a reason as to why this crazy situation happened. Now, if you want to know more about the Australian Skeptics $100,000 prize, simply go to skeptics.com.au. If you want to hear me and my team of reporters on the Skeptic Zone podcast, you can go to skepticzone.tv. Once again, it's been a wonderful pleasure to be here, almost at Dragoncon. I sincerely hope that we have an opportunity to all meet in Atlanta in 2021. It was one of the highlights of my year to go back to Dragoncon in 2019. It's mad, it's crazy, it's overheated, it's bizarre, and it's like nothing else in the world, and I love it. But for now, from virtual Dragoncon here in Sydney, Australia, this is Richard Saunders saying thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. That was wonderful. It was great to revisit some of those things because I was at some of those meetings and I enjoyed seeing those tests in real time. And as far as Dragoncon goes, Margaret Downey showed a picture of you as Epicurus earlier today. So we definitely miss having you here too. So are you at your studio? Is that at home?
Yeah, this is the actual part of the Skeptic Zone studio. You can't see behind here is all the workings and the microphones. And wait a minute, here we go.
Where's your kitty cat?
Careful.
There you go.
There you go. Hello. Let's not play. Oh, the cats are outside. Both of them are outside. They were scratching at the door earlier. But they have a habit. I did a blooper reel of that, and some people have seen it, where I was trying to record the talk, and every now and then the cat would chase the mouse across, and I had to give up.
Yeah, it's like you'd been sitting there all day and then suddenly the cat wants to do something noisy, of course.
Exactly when you need the cat not to be noisy. People with cats don't understand.
We know 100%. So have you ever had problems where, I mean, it sounds like there's been a lot of special pleading from these folks that are trying so desperately to prove their hypothesis. I know I've heard the excuse, well, my powers are not for sale, or, it would be, this is for a gift. I don't want to use it to make money. That's just cheapens it or something. So but there are psychics who are selling their skills everywhere, so, alleged skills. So, have you had anyone react violently?
No, not violently, but just bewildered. I've seen some water diviners, and you can look in their eyes and you can see the cogs in their mind crunching to a halt, because when they failed, and I think it's on the documentary called The Mighty Meter Muster Water Divining Test, which is on YouTube, you can actually see the cogs in their brain seizing up, because for the first time ever, they have failed at what they know they can do every day, like falling off a log. So not violent, but just utterly bewildered and confused, and then a tad annoyed, bordering on angry sometimes. But no one's ever really flipped out. And the reasons are, like I was making the point about the piano. If you're asked to do something you can do, and suddenly you can't do it, you will find a reason to excuse that failure. It's really interesting psychology.
Mm-hmm. So, have you ever? Is there anyone that's accepted that their skills are not truly what they thought they were?
I've heard about one before. Oddly enough, somebody in the very original water divining test with James Randi, way back in 1980, you saw a clip on the talk.
Mm-hmm.
I heard tales that he reconsidered that he couldn't really do water divining. I've never been able to verify that, but no, it really doesn't happen. It probably has somewhere in the world. Mr. Randi would probably be able to tell you about a time this sort of thing happened. But you could almost bet your house on the fact that they will find an excuse to explain their failure and maintain the belief in something they know they can do full well.
Okay. Well, Susan Gerbic has asked you to suggest 3 books for people who to read that are just starting out in skepticism. Something general. Flim Flam.
Flim Flam.
Absolutely. James
Flim
Randi. I have that one.
Yeah. The Demon Haunted World.
Yep, that's a good one.
By Carl Sagan. And a book I've read twice now in the last 6 months, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. An excellent primer on skepticism.
Oh, well, that sounds good.
Not just the podcast. The book is very good. I mean, as an experienced skeptic of 20 years, listening to this book just reinforced a lot of things to me, and I learned a lot of new stuff. And I would absolutely recommend that. And then there are many books. The Mask of Nostradamus is a terrific read by James Randi again.
Mm-hmm.
The Faith Healers
Mm-hmm.
by James Randi is a book that makes you angry, which is excellent. So there's a good catalogue of material out there.
What's been your greatest accomplishment? I'm pretty proud of you for that whole band thing, the power band thing.
It's hard to take so much credit for that because I just applied simple science. I was lucky in a number of respects. One, you might call it lucky that I knew the tricks. It's called applied kinesiology, and it's all to do with how you apply pressure and everything else. And applied kinesiology is a pseudo-medicine, it's a pseudo-science. But the tricks of applied kinesiology were being used to sell this power band. So I was lucky that I knew the tricks. I was lucky that the producer and the reporter on the TV show were very keen to extend the story. They thought that was great. And I was lucky that I knew the scientific method, so I could simply apply that. So that I'm pleased that happened. Maybe one of my greatest accomplishments is still being able to produce a podcast after 12 years every week. And the very first episode was recorded at Dragoncon in 2008.
Aw, that's really quite the challenge. There are a lot of podcasts that don't last. Most podcasts don't last that long. So I don't know if you were watching any of the feed earlier, but Bob Nygaard gave us some really, really impressive history regarding his help with prosecuting psychics, so-called psychics, or what did he say, self-described psychics, in bilking people out of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. Anyway, so he's asking, what's the most interesting rationalization a psychic has ever given for failing the test?
Oh, wow. How many stars are in the sky? I like the one that I heard once, that somebody failed a test. And then they said, and this is just a beautiful example of psychology and how the mind can protect itself. They said they failed because their guides gave them the wrong information. So, they're spirit guides, right?
Well, what good are they?
How good are they? I've heard that twice. But here's the beauty of it. This is sublime. Not only does this maintain and reinforce their belief in their spirit guides, it passes the buck. So they didn't fail. The spirit guides did it to teach them a lesson, and they should be humble because of it.
Yes, too much hubris. Too much hubris.
Isn't that? And when you think about it, they've done an incredible job to excuse their failure, maintain the belief system, pass the buck, and feel they've been taught a lesson all at the same time. So that's fascinating. Again, we revert back to the water diviners. There's all sorts of wonderful things they'll come up with. And it's true. We did a test once, and the diviners complained that the water in the testing bottle was different from the water in the calibration bottle. Of course, they were both poured out of. They were actually river water, both poured out of a bucket. So and it's in this documentary. They walk around saying that's not the same water. See, look, I'm testing it now, and it's obviously not the same water. Well,
okay, sure, it's not.
Okay,
the same
sure,
water.
why not?
Why not? Okay. So we have a question from Tim Sturgis. I have a teacher colleague who is into conspiracy thinking and is regularly on Facebook spouting his conspiracies. What can I do to help his mental health and not lose credibility as a teacher?
It's almost impossible to know. I mean, we are in the midst of one of the biggest pandemics of conspiracy theories I've ever seen. I mean, this is putting 9/11 conspiracy theories into the shade. When we have a good answer, I might be able to give you a good answer about that. It's very hard to challenge people who are completely down the rabbit hole. In fact, that has probably given me the best lead. There's an excellent podcast called Down the Rabbit Hole. That's it. That's a good. That's a good place. That's a very good place to go.
Okay.
I've got the book here somewhere. Yeah. That podcast gives very good information about getting out of conspiracy theories. But it's like people who believe in the psychics or water divining or whatever it is. It's I wish I knew a good, reliable way to get people to see things differently. It's very difficult.
It's very sad because it can really profoundly affect people's lives, and they're so invested in having this as part of their identity. Have you seen anyone have like any sort of breakdowns or any kind of decompensation? Or have you seen anyone that you think is frankly needing of psychiatric help and not just having this simple belief that they actually have a dense delusion?
Yes. The answer is yes, and it's very difficult because I'm not qualified to make that judgment. But sometimes, quite frankly, when someone comes to us for a test or whatever it is, you can pretty safely say they have bigger issues to deal with, and they may need some proper professional mental help. I've seen people extreme cases of that, but part of their problem, which we all hope they can overcome, is or can be severe delusions. So it's a very tricky one, and skeptics sometimes don't know what to do if somebody comes up who we may feel is in trouble, in some mental health trouble. Do we treat them like they're just somebody we can test? Do we point them in another direction? Then we get the criticism is, oh, you won't test that person. You skeptics are cowards, and you're not going to test this person on their claim. It puts us in a very awkward position sometimes. But yes, we do get people like that. A lot of people will write to the Skeptics headquarters here in Sydney with, frankly, very confusing, rambling letters. And it can be hard to know what to do about that.
Yeah. How many roughly would you say you've had apply, and how many of those have you gotten to the testing stage?
Oh, that's a very good question. Not as many as you would think. Most of the people, I'm pretty confident that we have tested, happen to be water diviners. If we hold a big water divining test, which we haven't done for some years, we'll get a big turn up of people who will use their rods and their pendulums and stuff. I personally, apart from the ones in Las Vegas, I've conducted a few tests here in Sydney, mostly people who think, or their claim is, I should say, they can talk with the dead or get information from spirits or read palms and things like that. But it's vanishingly small amount of people actually get to the stage where they're applying for the test and doing the test. I've seen informally quite a few people who said they can do something, and I'll go and have a look, and it really amounts to nothing, so they don't even get to the stage of even applying for the test. I think James Randi, over his long career, has had more people get to the point where they're being tested. I enjoy it. I really do. It's fascinating to sit there and have your palm read, or someone saying they can contact dead loved ones or find the gold hidden in whatever it is. So I love doing the test. Bring it on. I really enjoy it. And part of the reason we do it is to see whether someone can actually do these wonderful, marvelous things. Like I said in the talk, we don't do tests to debunk people. We do tests to give them every opportunity, fair, upfront, above board, no cheating opportunity to simply show us what their amazing claims are.
Who's the most famous or well-known self-proclaimed psychic who has taken the challenge? That's another one from Bob Nygaard, by the way. Thanks, Bob.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember. It was called Mr. Nobody Ever. The famous ones. No, I can't think of a famous person who's accepted the challenge. They'll give it lip service. Sylvia Browne told Randy years ago she would take the challenge, but it amounted to nothing. So the ones I've dealt with...
Or as Ben Radford would say, convicted felon, Sylvia Browne.
That's right. The ones I've dealt with haven't been the high flyers. I mean, we can think of many high-flying people who claim to talk with the dead and do big live audience shows, or not anymore, or whatever.
You'd think they would have seen this coming.
You think they would have predicted it. They're not interested, or their management wisely tells them don't take the Skeptics Challenge or something like that. So it really, seriously, it doesn't happen.
Oh, my. Well,
yeah.
Richard, we've got a couple minutes left. Do you want to use some this time for shameless plugs?
Where is it? Oh, I'm trying to point to it in the mirror backwards.
To your right,
hey.
to your right, to your right. There you go. Right on it. Nailed it.
I can do better than that.
There you go. That looks like skepticzone.tv.
That's the podcast. It's been going since 2008. And as I said in the talk, one of the proudest, you talk about one of my greatest accomplishments. I think this is probably one of my greatest accomplishments, inventing Origami Pegasus at the request of James.
That's right. You still have books that are on sale for Amazon that are.
Oh no, I wish I did. Actually, they've been out of print for many years, sadly. But that's okay. I put up videos. If people look up my name and origami on YouTube, they can certainly find videos of me teaching how to do origami, and that's great. But the little flying pig is. I was on the amazing adventure with James Randi in Alaska, and we had a wonderful time. And I was making origami for Randy and lots of people. And on the last day, he said, "Richard, why don't you invent an origami flying pig?" And that
was an excellent James Randi impression.
He's sitting up there, actually. I think he's just out of camera shot. My little James Randi doll.
Right.
And so I there he is. And so I came back to Australia, and within about a week, I guess, after various attempts and thinking about it, I came up with the origami pig. And so for a person who does origami to invent something which catches on and lots of people fold, which happened with the origami pig, I'm proud of that accomplishment.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, and Susan Gerbic gets one last final question. Ask him where he keeps his typewriter. Where do you keep your typewriter? I'm afraid I may have gotten into a private joke there, but...
All right. So for people who listen to the Skeptics Zone podcast know that every week for the past 6 weeks I've had a gag, a funny sketch where someone's madly typing a letter of disgust or indignation about something. And next week, Angie, you actually star in the next funny sketch about a new age veterinary practice with a typewriter.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Looking forward to that. Thank you so much for joining us, Richard, live from Sydney, Australia. We really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us on our live feed here at the Skeptrack, that's a virtual streaming for Dragoncon 2020, because we're all on lockdown. And so please wear your mask, please social distance, and we will see you at 9 for George Robb. Bye-bye.
As fun as all this streaming content is, we sincerely cannot wait to see you all in person again next year. Remember to stay healthy and safe until then. Wear a mask when interacting with other people out in the real world. Track Get more than 10 years of Skeptics Track programming at our video archive, video.skeptrack.org.